on. Let me fix my nose.
Hey, well, welcome to episode 5. I am Sonny. This is my wife, Cher. And I'm just kidding. I'm David.
Way better reference than some of the others you've used. Yes.
Oh, whatever. And we have a special guest today, the one, the only Tina Lynch. If everyone doesn't know this, you may not know this. Behind the scenes, Tina keeps my life organized in a way where I know what to do and where to go. So basically, the two people in my life that could literally destroy everything in my life are sitting on the same couch right now.
I wouldn't be able to survive without Tina either, though.
So Tina's our special guest, and I'll tell you why here pretty soon. But before we begin that stuff, we have something to get off the fence on, and this is chicken sandwiches. I know this is a national debate. Mm-hmm. Now, there are some issues that we need to bring up regarding chicken sandwiches, because in the area that we live, Chick-fil-A has given us the middle finger.
Oh, well, we don't have to say it like that. Maybe it's our tax laws. I don't know. Maybe they have a really good reason.
There's hope someday.
Someday. Whatever. Well, we don't have a Chick-fil-A.
I don't think saying that's going to help them want to come, though.
Okay. And then on this chicken sandwich, and I know Chick-fil-A basically got taken on by Popeyes.
Oh, yeah.
The problem with our Popeyes is I frankly think it's a good chicken sandwich. It's just going to take you 30 minutes to be able to get that chicken sandwich, because you're also going to have to loop back around because they didn't give you the chicken sandwich in the first place. And so I'm just telling you personal experience. It's not always, you don't always get what you ordered, so you have to go reorder. It's good. It's good quality food. But so what we've got is we've got chicken sandwich we'll find out where they're from after we eat them, but we're going to decide between these three which tastes the best. Now, again, this is not Chick-fil-A. It's not Popeyes, but it's three franchises, three fast food places that are local. So grab your plates, ladies, and you can eat as much or as little as you want. Don't look at which it is, but we are not going to be on the fence about which one is the best. We're going to choose of these three which one is the best, and so pick whichever one.
Oh, some of these.
I know, it's hard to.
Mm-hmm.
Tina made sure that there's no tomatoes on this, which is awesome.
Tina, do you like tomatoes?
I love tomatoes.
I do too.
It really helps add to the chicken sandwich.
Mm-hmm. But David, you're missing out. Is it a texture thing or a taste thing?
Well, it can't be taste. He loves ketchup and salsa, right?
Right.
I mean, just whatever your opinion is, because we all have opinions based on a variable issues. Just whatever you just like. However, for whatever reasons you like it.
Right. I'm just curious.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because I love tomatoes. I could eat it like an apple. I just love them so much. They kind of taste like something and nothing, though. Tomatoes. Oh, wow.
How's it going so far? Right now, people chiming in, at least in their heads, going, well, I know which one's the best.
This is a lot of bread. This one.
Yeah, sometimes the bun takes up too much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would agree.
I'm trying to figure out where it's from. And that's probably not a good idea. I hope
difficult.
Dear Milton turns down my volume while I'm
chicken.
chewing
People have
into
upped
the
their game
microphone.
on the chicken sandwiches.
I'm so sorry.
They really have.
And I gotta say, it does dramatically affect the bun. It's not just chicken. It's not just like the piece of chicken on that sandwich. You have to include the taste of the bun, the whatever you just do. I think start to order if you want to put it in order where you. I don't know. This is difficult. This is one of the tougher ones that I feel like.
We're not just going off of the chicken, though, too. We're going off of the full experience.
You know, I'm gonna.
You might have to taste the chicken separately.
Yep, I'm gonna taste the chicken separately.
This is really hard.
How gross. Blah, 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 blah. You guys have thoughts yet? I'm going to say something that's going to make me be on the fence right now. They're all incredibly similar. Like,
They are. Even the chickens are just slightly different.
like they are incredibly if you told me they were all the same chicken, I might believe you. And the differences are the buns and all that. Okay, here, I'm going to tell you my first one. Is McDonald's? This is ridiculous. I quit.
Ooh, you picked Ooh.
Unbelievable. See, my dad thinks McDonald's has really upped their game.
They
And
have.
and we did this on a vacation, and McDonald's surprisingly was like second place. And I think just the chicken is
What is the
Is
winner?
Culver's a C? So what are the places?
So Culver's is the other one.
Okay.
And
wait.
then Wendy's.
sorry, Wendy's. I was wrong. It was upside down. Wendy's is first for me. McDonald's is second.
I think I like Culver's and then McDonald's and then Wendy's only because Wendy's the bun was overwhelming. But I liked the pickle on the Culver's one. And I liked the McDonald's one just because it's the one I'm most used to. That was the only fast food place in my hometown. So
Tina, what do you think?
See, Wendy's is Wendy's is the one I enjoy the most.
yeah.
But I would McDonald's is like a second for me.
Doesn't that surprise you? It's frustrating.
Which years ago I would have said no.
No, I totally agree.
Years ago I would have.
Goodness. I hate giving McDonald's any credit, and I'm sorry. Just because it's kind of like, the days of like when the Yankees used to be good or or whatever sports teams dominate stuff, and you guys may not. Anyways, I mean the Packers. Well, no, the Packers. They've never been good. It's fine. I'm just kidding. Well, okay. So I picked Wendy's, and you were
I was Culver's.
Culver's.
I never eat at Culver's, which is kind of funny. I like Culver's. I just
Well, I know many
don't
who would
do
say
fast food all
many
that much.
people I've actually talked to think Culver's is way underrated. All right.
I'm one of those people, I guess now. I guess that's
Well,
where
there
I
you go.
belong.
Eating in front of people who either were disgusted and aren't listening anymore at the
they're
sound
hungry.
or they're hungry. Off the fence.
The chicken
Wendy's or Culver's. Okay. One day we'll get a Chick-fil-A and maybe.
Or we could go to Sioux Falls or Wyoming.
Sure. So Tina is here for a very specific reason. This is funny, the topic after just eating. But anyways, our topic of the day, our on the fence topic is kind of two words come to mind. Self-control, which I guess, is that two words? No. Self-control. Okay, that's a hyphenated word. Anyways, self-control and portions.
Yeah.
Self-control and portions. This is not exclusively, we're not just talking about food at all. But I think we live in a culture now that overindulges, but there's lots of different roads to overindulge on, whether it be things you buy, things you view and like with your eyes and mind take in, with food, all that kind of stuff. And Tina, not to flatter you too much, but you're one of the most self-controlled people that I've ever met. Now, what I also know though is self-control is not just something that we're all just born with and you just have it and you're like, well, that person is self-controlled and that one isn't, and that person just got it at birth and you just didn't, so that's just how it works. You run my schedule, but I've seen you in life, you and Todd, your kids, how you govern your life, how all that. There is this it appears as though you pay attention to portion for a mixture of things. So we're going to talk about that. Okay. So, but I know when I ask you, you're like, well, but there's areas that I don't do this perfectly. Right. I know that. So,
True.
So when I bring up the topic of self-control of like anything like that, what comes to mind first, like when you're thinking that, is that an intentional decision on your part? Or would you still be in the corner of other people saying, no, you're just born with that and self-control is easy for you in every environment of life?
Yeah, it's definitely not something I was born with, but definitely something, one of those skills you have to learn. Something that, and some days, some seasons in life, you're really like you're doing well. You're like, man, I've learned this. It's going well, and then you hit other seasons where, oh man, you kind of got off track a little bit, and getting back into some of those disciplines and self-control that because it's really learned behavior, right? Just practicing over and over again. And when it comes to mind, I think of, instantly, I know we started with food, but yeah, that's definitely one big area, self-control there. And then even when I think about finances and that's a really big area and then even like managing your time. And just what does that all look like? It's almost, every area in our life needs a little bit of this, guidance and guardrails of self-control.
So I would imagine if everyone who's listening has at least one area right now that you can call it, maybe we've got it out of control or we don't have a rein on it, whatever like nice words we want to use that it's like, that's not, I'm overindulging in that area. So let's isolate one real quick because of some experiences I've had with you. So I'm just gonna bring them up. Okay. Occasionally we'll have different projects as a church that we do. And you're often put into not just like my assistant role, but you end up being like a project manager, which often means a budget manager, a someone who is aware of how things are spent. And so I would love to get into your brain. How do you make sure a project doesn't end up over budget? You probably have some sort of thinking process, like that's more than just, I don't want it to end up over budget, right? I mean, because most of us are like,
right, no one wants to.
All of us have probably done a budget at some point, but you stick with the budget.
Yeah, I think so. One of the biggest key things, because budgets are, you're right, they're moving targets sometimes, especially on projects. Yeah. And anyone who's even done a house project. Oh, yeah? I mean, it's in, you're trying to, sometimes you've got estimates, sometimes you've got real numbers, but it's this moving target. So one of the very first things is always, budgeting in extra. So you kind of have to have this, hey, we need to maybe aim for 80 to 90% of our budget because we know there's going to be unexpected things that arise. So that helps stay within, because otherwise if you budget all the way up to 100% on a project, more than likely you're going to be over.
So you budget in margin, basically.
Yes, absolutely.
Basically, okay.
Yep, so that's a huge thing.
Wait a minute. Some people are going, well, must be nice to be Tina that she has margin. But what you're saying is, it's not that you have extra more than anyone else. You're just saying you choose at the beginning that a portion of whatever you're about to manage, you're not going to use all of it.
Right. Absolutely. Huh. So that's a really key part for keeping.
It sounds so simple.
It is, but it's so hard.
Right. There's that old skit, the Saturday Night Live skit. I know it's dating us, but there's this old skit that basically says, "So you want me to run my money well? Don't spend everything I have." What?
Right.
But that's
it's so contradictory to kind of what we know in America. And then one of the other things is also, you're really discerning also between like, okay, what's an absolute, what's a need?
Okay.
What's a want?
How do you decide that?
Sometimes, well.
And this can be personal or church. But I mean, how do you go about deciding? Because I think that's where we all maybe, you might right now decide this is a need and want, and I might totally say something. Actually, you and I have done where I'm like, no, Tina, I want to get this. And you're like, David, you don't actually need that for your office, or you don't need that. So how do you decide that?
Yeah, so that's actually the thing that will be most different for everybody when doing, when you talk about budgets, when you talk about even projects, anything in your life, the want and the need thing is there isn't a one size fits all. Okay. Your wants and needs are going to look different than mine. So right off the bat, a lot of times when I think about, that financial aspect, it's really not a comparison game. I think that's sometimes where we get caught into it is, we're comparing, and maybe we might be looking at what someone else is doing, or maybe even someone's doing a certain project. They're remodeling their kitchen, or they're going on an amazing vacation. Nowadays that's all in front of us.
Right.
But you can't compare because their wants and needs might line up differently. Maybe you'll give up maybe something that's a different want to get a want that you are like, no, that's a higher priority for me. Yeah. Or a need is like, well, it might be a need for me, but it's not a need for you. Yeah. Like I don't need coffee.
It's true. Yeah.
It's, but for some people, it's a need. Like it's not.
What are you saying, Tina? What are you saying?
It's a need, right? You're like, they need to function and do well in life. And that's something that they absolutely love. And even in projects, when we talk about projects and those tastes, like some would say like, so you start kind of prioritizing. What are your top needs and wants? And then you can kind of go from that eliminating, because eventually like you can't have all of them. Right.
Well, that's one thing I've observed just because of how we work. Like, it's not that you're It's not that you're not human. But I think sometimes when we look at someone who appears self-controlled, and we're like, wow, you must not desire things or experiences or whatever like I do. Maybe we even consider it sometimes personality driven. And I think it's more, if you're self-controlled, you're priority driven. It's not that you don't want certain things. It's just that is below the priorities, and the priorities come in a prioritized way. So, okay. So you also work with teenagers.
I do.
Right?
Yes, I do.
So I'm curious to know, what are your observations? What are your observations about because we've been talking about money, but there's other ways. What are your observations about teenagers and portion control, self-control?
Yeah, one of the biggest things I see, I right now have senior high school girls. I've been with them since they've been freshmen, being their small group leader. So I've kind of navigated these crucial, high school years with them. And one of the things I see, which was very different from when I was a teenager, is the portion control and self-control with technology. That is something that drives a ton of their life into even from like who responded to me, who liked my post, just all these things. And that then determines so much of their life. Is just in regards to how they are socially connected through technology, which has been, and they'll admit it, but it's the hardest thing of actually getting it into a habit of having self-control with it. But, that's what fuels them. That's what fuels a lot of times their self-worth was what's in that technology and how they're communicating with people and how they're perceived to the world and what they're perceiving in the world. I see it as a huge area we'll have to continuously focusing on. And I'm sure it's even for adults. I know this is not just a teenager problem.
No. Well, what Katy and I think learned in the last year, 2 years, was that sure, we can tell like we do with our kids. Our kids, like you get this amount of media time or screen time a day, that kind of stuff.
No, and we limit social media. That was the priority was not having it. Was basically.
but what I've learned as an adult, when you're fully independent, we often overindulge. We often don't portion control because of emotional triggers. And like as an adult, by that time as adulthood, you've had some trauma, you've had some call it stress, you've had all that kind of stuff. I learned that I celebrate and lamented both with food. I would overindulge. And so I would end up, when I grew up, it was a birthday meal, like the special meal, you go out to eat or you do something, that was a big deal. Well, that birthday meal began to be a very regular, that's a lunch, and then that's a dinner.
And then the next, drive yourself now.
And I can drive myself, and I
go whenever you want.
And I can budget for that. And I can even, but what I didn't realize I was doing at the time was I was actually numbing some pain. I was emotionally experiencing things. And I think teenagers are doing the same. They're emotionally experiencing things, whether technology. And I think that's a bit of the drug that we don't even recognize we're doing. That's why we wanted to do this particular episode, was that many of us are on the fence, overindulging while we're on the fence. And that's what, many of us are lukewarm because, and well, how? No, I care about certain things. Well, yeah. But you are numbing with technology, with food, with buying, with public opinion, basically peer pressure, you might call it, or other people liking things and stuff like that. And I know in Katy and I's call it, I guess, health journey, whatever you want to call it, we started portion controlling our food. And it was like I had entered a POW camp. I don't mean to, I'm not trying to I've never been to a POW camp. Your grandpa was in one. I'm not, okay, probably is bad, but I'm just saying it was brutal to get off the fence.
It was so emotional,
with self-control.
Though. It was so mental and emotional, not so much physical, which I think was surprising to us. I think it was shocking.
It's still right now, it stirs up emotions in me. It was not easy. It was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life to get off the fence with portion control. It was, I don't even know how to describe it. The evenings where I would sit for an hour or two, all I could do was think about food. Like I had just had dinner. My stomach told me I was full. My mind told me there's stuff in the pantry. There's stuff in the fridge. That kind of stuff.
Fruity Pebbles.
So what I'm saying, and as adults, we're not, if we're not careful, we're not as observed and accountable to that kind of behavior. And so that's why I really think this is important, because there's probably many people who are listening right now and going, I'm on the fence, I'm overindulging in, and we all can list our things. Yeah. So, Tina, expert on self-control. What tips do you have, or what guidance? You're raising kids. I imagine that you're coaching your kids on some of this. I imagine you're married. I love your husband. I'm sure you guys have conversations about portion of whatever. What are some of your tactics? You've talked about prioritizing stuff, but what else? I know you've got probably a treasure chest of stuff.
Well, one of the other things is also, the motive behind it. So whether or not you think, like you said, when it comes to food, am I really hungry, or am I eating because I'm emotionally drawn to something? I'm feeling a certain way and I just want to feed that. Or, when I'm thinking about purchasing something else, why do I want it? Do I want it because I think it's going to give me a certain status, or do I want it because I really like it and it's going to serve a purpose? What are my underneath motives behind, why do I want the next thing? Is that a need? Is it a want? But really because our minds and hearts can deceive us. They really can. And so it's one of those things that even spending time thinking about it before you impulse do something. It could be anything. It could even be waiting. My kids will always say this, after dinner, I'm hungry. I don't know how that's possible. You just ate. And so even being just wait 30 minutes and see how you're feeling.
What a life lesson. Just wait 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
On anything. Yeah. Just wait 30 minutes.
Purchases, wait 24 hours, or talk to your spouse, or, one of the biggest lessons I've ever learned from you is to predetermine we shared an office years ago.
Oh, yes.
And I would know what time it was based on what snack you were eating. And what I learned then was you, either the night before or the morning of, packed snacks. And that it sounds probably so silly and small to you now because you did it, but it blew my mind that you predetermine, so you're not going and spending a bunch of money buying snacks and stuff. You were so intentional. And that, just like with the budget, when you do projects and stuff, predetermining what you're going to do and how you're going to lead yourself. And that is such a huge lesson in parenting, but even into adulthood. If we don't learn it during those critical years, that is one of the first steps, I think, is outside of deciding that you want to do it differently, is learning to plan and determine. And you changed my whole life with those almonds at like 10 a.m. It was wild, but it was a predetermining factor of like, I need to be more intentional and pay attention. And you do that, and you do it so well.
Yeah, the planning, it's so key.
Yeah,
I mean, because it's so easy to, when you're not feeling up for it, like to go off of your plan. Yeah. I even think about when my husband and I look at our budget, it's a lot easier when we have it pre-planned. So for some people, they might be doing this. For some people, this will be a new concept, but like every month of the year, we just save a small portion for like Christmas. Mm-hmm. Because you get to the end of the year and all of a sudden you have all these expenses between buying gifts for your family. And then if you have kids, you have gifts for the teachers. Mm-hmm. And if you want to do any gifts for coworkers or neighbors, and all of a sudden, it becomes this ginormous expense that you didn't have planned. And so really just planning out like, okay, so month by month, starting January of, a month of a new year, you just put a little away. And then when you get to, the end of it, you're like, wow, we don't have to stress about it. We've got...
You get to enjoy actually buying the gifts.
Yes, as opposed to going, I don't know, can we make it work this month or what came up? So pre-planning and determining is another just really huge step to keep you focused and motivated.
I don't know if you still do this, but I think at one time you told me that there was even like you set up a system that you didn't just take predetermined, hey, here's a little bit of what we're going to put into savings. You like even had the savings divvied up. Like, because I think sometimes we're like, well, I've got this big bowl. I'm going to put a little bit into another big bowl. The problem is if it's just in one big bowl, you don't even know what that whole big bowl is all about. You don't know that you've put some money away for a future car or Christmas gifts or whatever. You don't just, like put it aside in this generic environment.
Yeah, no, and I still have all my separate accounts.
Okay. So, I'm sorry if you didn't want the public to know this.
You can do that. At our bank, they're just all very different saving accounts. They don't cost any amount of money to open. Actually, I should say you have to keep a penny balance.
Oh, okay.
1 penny in the account. But what I have loved about that is, so like we'll have a vacation fund and a Christmas fund and a car fund and, gifts or just, you can name it anything you want it to. You can create them. And that helps us actually see like, okay, where's our true emergency savings? Yes. But where's actually all of our different things? Because you're right, it can get, when sometimes you just visually have one number, you're like, you could lose some of those maybe dreams and wants that you have and being focused. So that's really a huge thing that visually helped both my husband and I get on the same page to actually be like, no, like this is what we have for some of our goals that we had for the future and just those unplanned expenses and planned ones. Like some of them, like if you want to take a vacation or, holidays or birthdays are coming, it's great to just have, or car expenses, you always run into those, and it's really easy to be like, well, we've got some saved.
Well, you do the same thing with my calendar. I mean, like, and I'm like, where it's like, so typically on Mondays are budgeted where I'm writing my sermon. That's the same thing as a savings account, in my opinion. That's a David writing savings account, and that's what he does on that day. And rather than, hey, do a little portion here and a little portion there and a little portion. Yeah. No, I mean, the way my calendar is typically run, and you'll put stuff in on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, but it's essentially the same idea of many or several savings accounts, margin, and the way we don't just get margin. That's what I think. I keep hearing this over and over from you. You don't just get it. It's not. I think we're waiting for like the anniversary, birthday margin to come in, and we did it as kids, and we try to live adults that way. Yeah. Where it's like, no, as an adult, even as you should as a kid, no, you create the margin. Basically, savings account here, savings account here, savings account here, and now you live off of the rest of what you've already put savings away, and you figure out how to live on whatever that is. Yeah, but I've seen you do it with time, money, lots of things.
Yeah, and like you said, some of it too, one of the other just tips for that self-control is also, especially in the world we live in now, is we also have this beautiful like automation technology.
Yeah.
And so I love that automating the important things so that it's not even a temptation, because the reality is, like, you're right. Like, it's not like while I have practiced self-control, I still desire sometimes worldly things.
Right, for sure.
And it's not that, and that sometimes has my attention, but when I automate, like when we automate giving, when we automate savings, then it's not even like money that I'm touching. And so that's really helped. But I also think about that for time. Like, you've got automated, like, this is where we do it, and you schedule yourself time for this. Just all of that in calendars or just even time away. That automation just also really helps provide those barriers.
Okay. For sure.
Which is amazing.
All right, let me get a little pastoral, and then I want to close this up, and you kind of give us a parting, take some next steps on portion control, whatever it be, or self-control. I put this in the book, Off the Fence, but I want people to know that like this is not just like some new approach to bettering your life kind of a thing. This is a spiritual issue. Yeah. Like, portion control has been and always will be an act of worship. It's that big of a deal. That's why I think it's that out of control, because that's where the devil goes at us and tries to get us to overindulge anywhere we are willing to overindulge. So let me just, for everyone who just wants to hear some scripture, I'm going to read a bunch of scripture to you. Genesis chapter 2, verse 15 through 17. The Lord God placed the man in the Garden of Eden to tend and watch over it. But the Lord God warned him, as he's tending and watching over this, you may freely eat the fruit of every tree in the garden except the tree of knowledge of good and evil. If you eat its fruit, you are sure to die. In other words, God said, all right, I want you to manage all of this, but you can't indulge in this part. Portion control. Exodus 16:14. Then the Lord said to Moses, look, I'm going to rain down food from heaven to you. That would be amazing. Each day, people can go out and pick up as much food as they need for that day. I will test them in this to see whether or not they follow my instructions. If you're not new to the Bible, you're like, where have I heard that before? Enough food for the day. Jesus teaches us how to pray, where we basically ask for our daily bread. Not literally, actually, not where you wake up and you have no concept at all where you're about to eat that day. It's that everything that we have is actually God's, and you're actually living this way. And if you live with portion control, you can actually approach life that way.
Yeah.
You can actually be ready for God to use whatever you've got, because you have margin.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch more. I mean, in Joshua chapter 6, verse 18 to 19, do not take any part of any of the things set apart for destruction, or you yourselves will be completely destroyed. Sometimes God doesn't want us to take part in certain portions because of what it will do to our hearts. And just read through the whole Bible. The whole Bible oozes portion control. Yes. Don't consume everything you have the ability to consume. And nowadays, unfortunately, we have the ability to consume things that we can't even afford. And it gets trickier. There used to be a day that you couldn't buy a car if you didn't have the money to buy the car. You couldn't buy the house if you didn't have the money, all that kind of stuff. Restaurants weren't near as frequented as they are now. Portion control, it's an act of worship. And so whoever's on the fence right now, whatever's out of control, frankly, in your life, it's time to invite God into that. So Tina, just if you're talking to someone over not coffee, over a good glass of water, and they're saying, Tina, help me get started. What would you say to them? What would you whatever, where would you direct them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one to get started is, determine what areas of your life are out of balance. And then, bring those before God. How can you get those better in line? What do you need to maybe take away or stop doing? Or what do you need to start doing?
Yeah.
And really just kind of analyze that. And just a reminder that everyone is going to look different, right? We're all wired to be different. We all have different gifts. We have different abilities. We all have different temptations. Sometimes this is an area you're like, well, nope, I don't have an issue with online shopping.
Right.
Or I'm not on social media a ton, but maybe there's other areas that you're overindulging in. And so just really kind of spending time and thinking about where am I out of portion
Yeah.
with God. And how can I get that better in line by stopping or starting something?
It's awesome. I know if you're going, but I don't know how to get there. I would tell you one of the tactics I've used is my wife has access to my calendar. Tina has access to my calendar. And both of you could tell me, because you could tell me, David, you are working too much. You are not working enough. You are overindulging in this. You could both say that. So I think if someone's going, well, I don't know where I'm out of balance. How do I know? I would say find a trusted friend, a trusted pastor. And no joke, we've had people come and meet with different pastors on staff who have said, here's my budget. Where am I out of control on? And that's why I think sometimes people like freak out. Like, that's so vulnerable. But I think if we aren't aware enough of what's out of control, we're not going to feel it, and we're going to find ourselves dissatisfied. And so I would highly recommend people applying exactly what you just said, that find out what's out of balance. And if you don't know how to do that, then you need to find someone in your life who you give them freedom. Literally say, will you look at my life? Will you look at how I spend money, how I eat, how I give, what I do with my time, all that kind of stuff? Will you look at it and tell me if you see a lack of balance there, whether it be like I'm overindulging or maybe under, maybe it's hey, you're starving yourself. You're not giving yourself any margin for whatever. Thanks for one, the chicken sandwiches.
Yeah.
Wendy's and Culver's. But more importantly, thanks for modeling this, I think, incredible level of self-control that I know it's not easy, but you've modeled it. And so you've helped encourage us, Katy and I, and others around you, that it's worth denying yourself. It's worth it because of all the fruit that actually bears. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. We love you guys very much. Bye, friends.
I never know when to interject. I don't know when to say bye.
Bye, friends.